And that leads me into another thing is another essential component for recovery is a sense of humor. You've got to bring in a sense of humor because what we're trying to do is we're trying to take something that's dark and heavy and make it light. And so a sense of humor is absolutely essential.
You mean not light like trivial, but like literally like bringing the light into the dark?
Exactly. Exactly, not like trivial. And many people know about the case of Norman Cousins, who cured himself of cancer watching comedies or whatever it was, and things that made him laugh.
I think it was the Marx Brothers.
I don't, that wouldn't be my choice, but so, yes, you need a sense of humor. So when you're in this realm, if you will, of recovery, you might tend to want to watch things that are more depressing because it will be in resonance with where you are.
That's the familiar again.
That's the familiar. If you're depressed, you're going to be attracted to more depressing things. And so you're going to need to satisfy that need a little bit, but if you could wean yourself from that and start selecting things to watch and to listen to that are more inspirational and make you laugh and do crazy stuff like learn how to tell jokes and be creative. Be creative. There are a gazillion different ways.
And it's also about the choice of people that you want to spend your time with, I guess. It's not just watching movies, but being with people who make you feel uplifted and entertaining.
Okay, well, this is kind of a two-way street, because if you're depressed, you're not fun to be around. So you're going to be in isolation, or you're going to be attracting more depressed people into your experience. So if you can be mindful of the type of people who are in your environment and go and make an assessment and go, oh yeah, all my friends are depressed and they're into drama and trauma. That's an indication to me. That's another avenue of
It's another piece of feedback from the universe, isn't it? It's like if you look around at the people who seem to be your entourage, and
yes.
That seems to be telling a story, then that's a mirror to some degree. What do you say?
Exactly, yes. And so then you can look at that mirror and say, do I like that? And then you start mindfully choosing people who are uplifting and who are positive thinkers and who are creative.
Right. And because it's important for them to be wanting to be with you, then that offers the challenge of the choice for yourself about how to be valuable and interesting and of service to others rather than being obsessed with yourself.
Yes, so that's an incentive for you to work out of your depression, because depression is a big part of this. Because it feels like there's obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And that's where the determination comes in, that you have to recommit over and over and over again. It's not just the original commitment, yes, I want to go to transformation. It's like, no, you have to recommit all the time, almost every moment, sometimes there in the beginning.
It's like that place of commitment that you need to stand in actually becomes a challenge for yourself very regularly. It's part of the cycle.
Right, and sometimes you will feel overwhelmed. And that's when you feel like tossing your hands up and going, I'm never going to get anywhere. These thoughts, kind of trickle in. And what I do during those cycles is I acknowledge the fact that, yes, sometimes this does feel like a big job and that it might be too big. Then I just call it battle fatigue. I go, okay, this is just battle fatigue. I'll get up again. But for right now, I'll just, lay my arms down to rest and rest. And then the feeling passes eventually, usually within a day. And now if it happens, it just happens for a few minutes at a time. And so I just call it battle fatigue. You can call it whatever you want to, just to give it a label that assigns it a temporary place in your experience, that it's not going to be, okay, I'm going to give up. It says, okay, this is just temporary. And then I can move on. And you get up again and you do it again and again and again. And that's where mastering the moment comes in. That maybe you won't get, I don't know if it's ever that top of the mountain analogy. I don't know if that ever exists, but at least you go higher and higher up the mountain and you get a better and better view. And then you're just happy with the view that you've got. Just be happy. Oh, I can see, instead of staying in the valley of pain, you've gone a little bit up the mountain, and just appreciate yourself for going that far up the mountain. And appreciate yourself every step of the way. And self-love. Self-love is another essential thing. And that's another kind of recommitment. Because you can't love anybody else. You can't really be of service to anybody else unless you have that self-love. You can't give something away that you don't have. And this is part of the process. Because when somebody's been through trauma, sometimes they can end up, or many times they can end up devaluing themselves and actually hating themselves.
Even thinking that they must have deserved it or something like that.
Yes, especially, a child being abused by a parent. Children will look at parents as gods. And so if a parent does something to a child that is bad or damaging, then the child will believe that they deserved it. They must have done something to deserve it because their parents are gods. And so then that concept is rooted in that person's subconscious in adulthood. And so they've taken on this self-image that, there's something wrong with me. So there's that journey of self-love, which doesn't matter what your background is. I think that's everybody's journey, is to learn to love yourself. And that's another very essential component.
And there's another aspect to this, and that's what some people call karma. That it could be mistakenly believed by some people that, oh my God, I've got all these bad things happen to me this lifetime, so I must have done something really bad earlier in order to bring this on myself. Which I would say is an enormous spiritual elephant trap that is just not necessarily valid, because in your instance, I believe that you are as certain as you can be that you chose to experience this stuff so that you could embark on this extraordinary journey and end up helping others. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my belief. Yes. I believe that I went through the darkest of the dark so that I could transform it and help other people transform their lives. And I don't know, it's pretty nerdy. Could have chosen something else.
Well, people choose all kinds of things for reasons best known to themselves.
Yeah, when I started exploring that, I go, what was I thinking? Oh, but now that I've gotten this far along, I'm going, okay, all right. I'm feeling satisfied and empowered. And
maybe you're thinking, well, you know what, I don't have to do this one again.
I don't know. I'll have to have a discussion with with who's in charge.
Maybe. Well, no, but this is an important point. Maybe you're in charge. Maybe you decide whether the experience is.
Yeah. Well, that's where I go. What was I thinking?
Right. I mean, this is the whole message here, that it's up to us. It's not up to anybody else.
Exactly.
Now, just to talk about something slightly more sobering, but which is important because it belongs in this conversation, I think. Okay. Earlier on, we were talking about the challenges that we are presented with in this kind of situation and then need to deal with in an effective way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what some people could call the suicide trigger, which is part of the programming. And I think Cathy O'Brien, if I understand it right, this is something that Cathy O'Brien mentions. It is understood by those who have researched this whole phenomenon that there's like a self-destruct program that is instilled in what could be called, for lack of a better word, sex slaves or whatever, that actually they're going to self-destruct when they're about 30. And you actually went through this and you survived that too. Could you just mention that, not from a point of view of, oh my God, this is a terrible story, but once again, there may be people watching this who are wrestling with this sometimes.
Yeah, well, I find it very fascinating that it could be done to begin with. I mean, wow. I mean, there's so much we don't know about the human brain and the body and all of that. It's amazing. What happened was I mean, there was a 3-month period where I was just obsessed with taking my life. But the overriding thought was, oh, I have children. Who's going to be their mother? And that's what kept me going. Actually, I was trying to see if I could find somebody to be a replacement mom so that I could exit. And but I was so ill at the time that it wasn't possible. So my remembrance is that this happened for about 3 months, and I was very curious. And I attribute it to the fact that I was going through a lot of pain with the TMJ, but I'd gone through a lot of pain before and after that period. And so when I read about this phenomena, I go, oh yeah, that happened. And then I talked to my brother. I have one sibling who went through this with me. I grew up in a household with 3 other siblings. And my brother reported the same thing, and he survived that impulse for the same reasons, because he had children.
At the same age?
Around the age of 30.
Okay. It feels to me that it's important just to flag that up, because once again, it's part of the message that you were mentioning earlier, that people who feel this, and now I've never experienced this myself, but I'm assuming that if one is feeling like ending one's life, then one couldn't be more alone at that point, but one is not. It's like this is part of the program. Maybe a lot of people have got this implanted in them. It's a self-destruct thing. We have choice at all moments, and there may be others who are experiencing exactly the same thing because it's exactly the same program.
Yeah, and specific, not trauma victims. We're talking about specific mind control.
Yeah, right. So it's specifically about that, but it is important. And also, I mean, regardless of whether this was an implanted program or not, for anyone who goes through those periods, I guess your message is that this too shall pass, right? We have to make it through every day, and then every week, and then every month, and then finally the storm passes, the internal storm passes, and one's able to find things that make it all worthwhile, which is your message now, right? Because you've got these beautiful children, you've got a productive life, you're helping a lot of other people. I mean, you're much more fortunate where you are right now than many, 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 many others out there.
Well, actually, I'm very grateful for my experiences. If you listen to Eckhart Tolle, and he talks about the pain body and how people who have the biggest pain body will be the ones who are the most motivated to let go of it. And that would be me. And I can look back at other people who, I might have been a little envious of, thinking that, oh gosh, they didn't go through this and this and this. But then I see that they don't have the level of motivation that I have to improve, because it's not painful enough.
Right. So again, you're saying that this is, in a weird kind of way, it's part of the gift that you referred to earlier, because this has actually been the motivation for you to develop so much spiritually, you could say, because I guess you had to.
Absolutely, and I can say this 100%, that my experience was a gift. And it's empowered me to have the strength and the willpower to go and spread this around to spread the gift, the realizations and the power of knowing that we all are very powerful creative beings. This is our true reality. But most people think that we're just these bags of bones walking around, and we're way, way beyond that. And then also, this makes me think about going back to the spiritual component, that it's absolutely essential to choose a spiritual path, whether you go out to find a teacher or you find a certain system of meditation, whatever it is that appeals to you to bring you on your spiritual path. This is so, so important. And what I'd like to inform people, just because you're sitting here breathing and you're alive, means that you have been supported, because these human bodies are so very, very, very fragile that nobody would be alive unless they had lots of support. So that's another thing to going back to visiting people who are going through that cycle of discovery and shock and pain, to know that they're alive right now because they have been supported. They are supported. And that is another thing to know, is that, oh my gosh, I've got all this support. Then maybe if I pay more attention to my support instead of where I have deficits, then maybe I can expand that experience, because whatever you focus upon, you expand. And now this becomes a balancing act, because you need to recognize what needs to be rectified. But then you move right in and you think, okay, solution oriented. This is what I need to do. Be focused on the possibility. Be focused on whatever you want to expand in your experience, because what you focus upon, you do expand. This is the difficult part of getting out of those first stages, is because you're so focused on the pain. If you have chronic pain, whether it's emotional or physical or both, you tend to be very focused on it. Well, if you're focused on it, it's going to expand in your experience. This is really difficult when you're at that stage. So how do I get myself out of focusing on this pain? Then you have to just be mindful. Oh yeah, okay, the pain is there. Let me focus on, what do I really want in my life? What do I really want? And visualize, the power of visualization and fantasy. This is very interesting, that the Illuminati themselves value fantasy more than reality.
Yes, it has a way of informing their reality and creating their reality.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. And they understand the powerful processes.
And the rest of us want to think that we're realists, and so we keep focusing on what we have instead of envisioning what kind of world do we want to have, what kind of life do we want to have, and that we have that power of creation. And this is the most fantastic time to be alive on the planet, because there is so much energy behind this power of human creativity right now, that this is the time of possibility, of really, really breaking out and changing the way the world functions. And it all begins with each of us as individuals. We've all been traumatized as a collective. You know, all the wars, and, you know, if you go through history, we've been traumatized over and over and over again. Well, we have a chance to re-script that now. We have a chance to transform. So this is for the greater numbers out there. It's not just whatever you do at an individual level can be expanded to the greater population.
So this is a really important thing that you're saying here. You're saying that your individual journey can actually be mapped onto the whole human race. The human race has been traumatized. The human race has been abused. The planet has been traumatized. The planet has been abused. And we have it in our collective gift to transform that too, in exactly the same way as you've been describing.
Yeah, my life is like a microcosm of the journey of humanity, going from a very dark place and going through these realizations and then understanding that I have the power myself to change and that I need to make the decision to take responsibility for where that change is going to take me and move into forgiveness. So, collectively, we need to forgive all of the atrocities of the past and acknowledge them and then forgive them so that we can all move on into transformation. And that's a whole other discussion. But it's very powerful. I was rethinking, I don't want my dad's picture in there. It is not relevant to this discussion, but the picture of me with the kitty cat might be nice.
We can make all those decisions later.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. I just want to throw this at you. You've talked about forgiveness. For some people, that's a mighty concept to wrestle with. And sometimes it's easy to talk about, and sometimes it's a little harder to put into practice. I know that your father passed away when you were still a girl. Mm-hmm. If you were able to say something to him now, what would you say?
Actually, I would use the Ho'oponopono prayer. I say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, I love you. Because he went through stuff too. He wouldn't have done what he did unless something was done to him. He was just perpetuating the cycle.
I believe he was blackmailed, in fact.
I can't prove that, but I suspect that. And this also is a segue into the Illuminati themselves. They go through this. They go through this trauma in order to keep this cycle going. So it's like they're stuck in a pattern. And how wonderful would it be to forgive them and say, it's possible for you to get out of your cycle of trauma. Because when somebody is a perpetrator, when you've got this perpetrator and victim thing going on, it's not good for either party. It's not beneficial to either party. And so we're all in this together. We're all in this together. And Shakespeare said, life is, what is it? Life is but a play, or life is a stage, and we're all actors. And he also said there's nothing that's either bad or good, but thinking makes it so. Shakespeare was one bright fellow. And so we're all the same. So yeah, if he were standing right here, I could give him a hug and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what you went through.
And I believe you've expressed the thought that the reason why you can say that is because you feel that right now, wherever he is, he may be suffering more than you. Yes. Not because he's in any kind of place of damnation, but because he hasn't got out of the cycle yet, whereas you pretty much have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that way, you're strongly suggesting we can feel compassion for our abusers because they're still stuck in this cycle and they're not going to be able to get out of it anytime soon. Mm-hmm. Whereas the opportunity for people who've experienced bad things at the hands of the abusers is that we have the choice to be able to transform.
Yes, and like I said, forgiveness is love, looking at an incident without assigning blame. There's no blame on anybody. We're all here we're all here in the matrix, if you will, experiencing stuff. If we want to know what forgiveness is about, then we have to experience something to forgive. If we want to learn about forgiveness, we need to experience something that we have to forgive. If we want to learn about loyalty and betrayal, then we have to have an experience of betrayal so that we can understand what loyalty is all about. We learn through opposites. We learn about love through experiencing hate, etc., etc. So this is all a big classroom.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, Cathy, thank you so much.
Okay.
There's an enormous quantity of wisdom here to be absorbed from your experience, and I really want to thank you for sharing it with us today.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing this with everybody. Appreciate that.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you. I can barely speak.